Yeah. I know, I understand. Good. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Wait, why not? It's like Hood River, it's even shorter of a drive.
Good evening, Ron. How you doing? Yes.
We're piloting one load that had like this big dome shaped thing kind of on a big, what was that?
Some kind of a window, really thick,
Oh, really?
an aquarium or something.
Interesting.
Cool. We stopped 2 lanes traffic all the way from Ontario to.
Oh my goodness.
We pull off every so often when we found a long flat area with an off ramp. Probably 20 minutes. My phone went off and told me there was a meeting. I'm like, what?
I won't be late. Really? Well, I think we'll get started since Lisa has a presentation before. Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome everybody to the January 23rd, 2023 City Council meeting. I would ask the city clerk at this point to call the roll.
Counselor Long,
Present.
Counselor Runyon,
Present.
Counselor Richardson,
Present.
Counselor Randall,
Present.
Counselor McLaughlin absent, and Mayor Mays.
President, my understanding is Councilor McLaughlin will be a little late, so I'm sure he'll be here pretty soon. Okay, item 3 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask everybody to please stand and hold your hand over your hearts and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic. Thank you. Item 4 is the approval of the agenda. There are 2 items are to be removed from tonight's agenda. Number 1 is item 5A, which is the Jacobs presentation, will be presented at a future time as I understand. And also item 10B, the public hearing on the closeout of the CDBG grant will also be removed from the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll move to approve the agenda
As amended.
as amended.
As amended. Is there a second?
Also.
It's been moved by Counselor Randall and seconded by Counselor Runyon to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. 5A, as I said, has been deleted from the agenda, and that leads us to 5B, which is the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce update. Ms. Farquharson.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Farquharson, and good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. And I have Jennifer Gonzalez, who is the chair of our board, with us also tonight to help me with this, or actually just to stand here and remind me what I'm supposed to say. So you all received, let's see if we can do this. You all received the quarterly report for quarter one, July through September. We have had different pushes, bumps, and reasons for me to be here. But one of the reasons I asked for Isaiah to help me bump this out is we don't have good solid numbers for lodging until almost a month and a half after the last month that we need lodging numbers for. So that December, or actually not the September, we don't have good numbers until almost October because of the way the reporting happens with Travel Oregon. So we had that and some other things push us out. So here we are with quarter to one. And I wanted to go over some of these, and I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet because I have some other information I want to deliver to you that was not in your packets. So obviously with tourism, our main objective is to provide and help to tell the people an awareness of the experiences and the things that they can do in the Dalles. But the number one factor that helped us determine if we're doing our job or not before some new software came along was the lodging report. And that lets you know all of those different things. But we've also done all different kinds of reports ourselves. But I wanted to go over our lodging report, and that is the first one that you're going to see in that packet. And I broke this out so that you could actually see 3 years. Typically, we do just a comparison of this year to last year. So if you look, you'll see 2022, 23, because of the way our fiscal year is, 21, 22, and then 2019, 2020. I wanted to show you that. That was kind of our last healthy year before the pandemic. So this way you kind of have a little bit of comparison of where we were and what we've been doing, and then where that hits on that. I've given you also the Mount Hood Gorge region for the current year, and I've given you the Pacific Northwest and the United States, just so I want you to have a comparison of how everyone else is doing with those lodging numbers. As you'll see for July, August, and September, and I was able to slide in November just because we got our numbers just recently from those. And you'll see that we've gone up and down. Some months are better than others. And then you'll see that that is compared to 21, 22. And then when you compare them to obviously 2019 and 2020, you do see some of the effects of different things happening there. But overall, when you compare our lodging to the Mount Hood Gorge region, the Pacific Northwest and the United States, we are actually right in there. It's obviously going to vary, depends on what we're doing, what weather we're having, and to be honest, what fires we're fighting. As soon as communities start hearing that there's even fires close to us, they're on the phone calling us right away, asking where it's at, how close can they be, and it actually deters a lot of that. One of the other deterrents that we've had that faced the last 2 years is the closure of the bridge right there. It's not a vein, it's an artery, especially when it's closed off on the weekends. That is traveling for wine tasters. They're going down the gorge on both sides. And by having that bridge closed, they choose to go all the way to Maryhill rather than going down Biggs and looping around and coming back. Just in their minds, that's an easier route. So they'll cross over at Hood River and we'll never see those guests again. So we are looking forward to that bridge being completed and passable on the weekends once again. And I have a feeling it will be reflected in this. But keep in mind, this report right here is provided to us by Travel Oregon. And so it is a sampling of our county. We just happen to know the hotels they use for this sampling is the Dalles. They're only pulling from the Dalles, but it is not 100% accurate. It does not have all of our hotels, and we've known that, but right now it's the best source that we've had until the end of this report. Then I'll tell you what we have that will give us a little bit better data now that we have it. I just have to figure out how to read it all. I need training on it still. So that is where we are on the lodging report. We can effectively see on months where we were lower before and we were higher. We actually were doing campaigns last year and the year before, last year to get people here. And these were expensive campaigns. They were done within Portland so that we could reach that audience that was drivable and can get right to us. You'll also see that there's a dip in this year, but that dip goes nationwide. That's because our overseas markets are completely open. They were not completely open last year for the visitors that were traveling. And so that restricted them to going in the US or driving over a border if they were allowed. This year, there are no restrictions. No country restrictions are with COVID on that. And so they're able to travel and fly free to other countries, which brought that tourism down over the entire United States down a little bit. But we're back at some of those levels that we were experiencing 2 years and a year before the pandemic. So we're not off, and we see it climbing steadily again, especially with the fuel prices that increased and with airline tickets that were increasing. It is now causing our people to hesitate and visit locally or within the region, like the Pacific Northwest, just because it is less travel, less fuel used for that, especially with inflation on many other aspects. So that discretionary spending is less. So that actually, it's unfortunate, but it actually kind of works in our favor for our region on that piece of it. I'm just going to touch base really quick on page 2. I've listed kind of where we focus our social media, and our media coverage is listed down below. I want you to know, along with the social media, we have revamped our own Explore the Dalles website. We've put a little bit of oomph in there, restructured some of the pages and the attractability of that. We're using a couple other tools that will help us with that SEO with the work of our web designer. And so that is happening there, and we're already seeing boost in the traction on that. So we're adding new video, new pictures, trying some new things. We'll be doing some new itineraries. We're having fun with the top 5 spots, Instagram photoed in our town, and using some of those top 5 eats that was voted on by the community and those around us. So we're using some of those local things to drive that website and to give it that very, very local flavor to our outside people. And so the media coverage I've listed by the month of either we've been printed or digital or in a radio or TV show. So you have links, and when you go to this document that I know that Izetta has sent you, you'll be able to click on those hyperlinks and be able to view the stories and the different TV shows and the audio from some of those radio shows where we are either mentioned or featured. And then I wanted to let you know our upcoming feature. We worked with Wander with Wonder, a fun publication, mostly foodie, but they are a worldwide publication that is known all over for visiting different destinations and very great pictures. Oh my gosh, her pictures are amazing, but going around and trying the different food in the community and then writing about that feature and where they visited. We will be in the February-March edition. What we did is we did a fam tour with Tracy Baird. She is the writer. Brought her here, put her up overnight, paid her travel. She fortunately lives in the Northwest. And so I didn't have to pay for a plane ticket. And then we took her around. I only had a short amount of time. It was about 32 hours total from when she got here to when she left. But we managed to get her into 12 locations and try all kinds of different food. Yes, that's when you try a little, otherwise you're stuffed. But we were able to give her some different experiences. She took photos. We got her into some attractions, into some stores, did her interviews, and then put her up over here. And then that feature will be in February, March on their website. We're pretty excited. It's a new publication. Tracy is not new to me. I've worked with her for many years, but the publication is new. So we will see how we're doing this. We're also doing a advertising campaign along with it and throughout the next few months to try that digital platform as far as food, and the East Gorge Food Trail will be also featured on those different things. The last page, it's numbers, and you guys can look over that. This is, we track everything in the chamber, how many people walk in, how many people call on the phone, how many relocation packets we do, welcome packets. If for those of you who are new and do not know or not familiar, the chamber loves to know if there's any groups, even if it's just a family reunion group, to large car groups coming, even 500 groups, say like the swim team, and we will put together welcome packets. If it's something like the swim team, we weren't asked this year, but in the past we've done coupons and put coupons in the bag so that they can go down and visit their different businesses and eat with a coupon and discount. We keep track of where those people are coming from, what country they're from, or what states, and we report that back to you, what our top states are and top countries that are coming to visit us. And then you can compare that to the walk-ins down below for the entire year. You will see that people are more reliant on web and phone now instead of walking into the chamber, but we still have quite a few people who come in and visit us and ask us, what's there to do in the Dalles? And so we love telling them and telling the stories of all of our businesses, attractions, and those different things that are exciting and fun to do. So that is my basic just numbers update for you. Do you have questions so far?
Any questions for Lisa so far?
So far.
You mentioned that you don't know the hotel stats until a month and a half after
Mhm.
the end of the month.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
when we get them from Travel Oregon, but I'm hoping to have a different type of stat report for you that I might be able to have within 30 days
Oh.
of that last month. It still takes a while for everybody to process the statistics. And so, but this will actually be a more encompassing report as soon as I figure that all out on that reading. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But before we get there, I wanted to highlight for you what it meant to do a FAM tour versus just a print article versus let's just say an advertisement. We work and we have different avenues on those different pieces. And so I've given you a copy of a couple of things. This is the Real News. It is a small publication still published in Seattle area that a large demographic, and they're just outdoors and fishermen mostly purchase this. They read it from front to back because there's usually tips, advocacy, and all different kinds of things in it. I've been working with this since 2014. They've done many features and articles of us. On the front cover, this Kings and Cod is our local fishing guide that's here, a chamber member and a resident of the Dalles. The story continues on the first inside cover for the full page. And it then continues to page 8 for half of a page. I wanted you to kind of understand what it meant to do a FAM tour and get that kind of press coverage. So for me to print and reserve those pages for whatever I wanted to put on there, pictures, text, and everything, the front cover, inside cover, and half of another page inside would be $7,485. That's what it would take for me to cover that. Whether I wrote the story and put the photos in there, I could pay for that and they would print it and it would look like it's just a part of the publication. But because I do it in a form of a FAM tour, familiarization tour, I'm bringing down the writer. I pay for him overnight, pay for his meals and his excursion, and then he goes back and writes the story. And this one happens to be a photographer also. So Terry came down, we put him up for 2 nights. I fed him some food, sent him on his excursion with a fishing guide so that he could do this for this publication. And my total expenses were $637. So we saved $6,848 by doing this method and getting this kind of coverage for the story. So that is just one of the aspects I like to do. And same with the article. I will be able to give you more numbers after I talk to Tracy and we see how big our digital footprint for the Wander with Wonder. I brought her down, we put her up for 2 nights, paid for the food while she was here, and we paid for her fuel to get here and go home. I'm gonna well imagine that her prices are gonna be close to the 9 and 10,000 for the article on her digital publication, but we invested maybe $1,000 total into her to do this. So that's one of the ways we try to really, really take the money from this budget and quadruple. And I like to at least double. I'm not happy unless I can double it on those endeavors. But another piece that we've done, and just so you know, some of you have Good Housekeeping in front of you, and some of you have Women's Day. It is the same ad, same company who owns both of these publications. We're very familiar with these. These have been around since, remember my mom looking at some of these. So they've been around for a while. They have a reputation. They're very reputable. You guys all have a little flagget of where that ad is. This is a full page ad. Typically, I couldn't even touch a full page ad in one of these. And I don't usually because it's a hit and miss, our ads there. But these guys, every once in a while, because I'm on their list, I get remnant ads. And this is where somebody booked it, but now can't fill it. So they get a certain fee from that vendor. And so then they offer the savings to somebody else. So a full page ad in the Portland market, because what you may not know is these are done by regions. So your Good Housekeeping, the basic articles are all the same, but the ads are by your region. So we bought the Portland region and we bought into the Boise region. And so those are the markets we're looking at. And if we had purchased this at full price, that full page would have been $3,300 just for one ad. But because we bought it on the remnant, we got it for $1,600. And so those are what we try to do every day. We try to find a way to be on those remnant pages and have ads ready to go so that we can actually save more than half of that piece of it. The readership on the Portland alone, just that, is 75,000 people. And the readership on the Boise one was 50,000 people. And so we were able to purchase those at a great savings and be able to put us out there in a publication that people go through page by page. So that is one of the things I just wanted to let you know what we work really, really hard to do. Another part of that is relationships, connections, and working with some of these publications. The Real News, I have been working with, like I said, since 2014, but because we've done regular work with them, I'm still paying the 2014 ad prices. It's just something he goes, I will continue that contract with you until it's, you guys are no longer working with us because of the trust that he has. We pay our bills on time. We do a good job with him, and he loves how we bring the fam tours. We're timely and relevant on the subjects that we're talking about and having the fam tours done. So there's that on that piece of it. Any other questions so far? Yes.
Is that
Rob.
1-800 number? Is that like a direct line to the chamber?
Oh,
On Explore the
yes.
Dalles?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep, it is. I will try not to answer the phone, but yes, it's direct line to us. Rod, did you have a quick? Oh, sorry.
I have to get permission from the mayor. Anybody else have a question? Council Runyon. You mentioned there were a couple of hotels that will not be in the report that Travel Oregon didn't know about them, or?
No. They do a sampling. They purposely don't have every hotel listed in these reports in any county.
Why is that?
It's just a third party is doing it. That's a lot of work.
Or are there some hotels that we would rather have in their report than others that are in there?
But I don't have control over that at all. It has to do with certain reports. There are 3 different reporting companies for our hotels to be a part of, and they have to pay to be a part of that in order to get reported. So some hotels use Star, some hotels use another one, and some hotels use a third one. And so if I want the data from all of them, I need to get all 3. And then I need to find out who is and who isn't. And then I need to put them all in a spreadsheet myself and then figure out those numbers myself, because the Travel Oregon, they do a sampling so that it signifies a trend and what your community is doing as far as lodging. However, I have an answer because we have a new software. It's called Datafy. And I think you guys remember during the budget process, I asked if we could bring this software in and make it a line item in our budget to continue. It is the first time we will have documented great data for tourism. It is all, it's going to be mostly correct because it's based on cell phone usage. So they're basing the cell phone on people having their phones on. They don't have to plug into an app. They don't have to go do something. It's just on and available, not blocked, not protected, but available. And we have set up with Datafy certain points of interest. So let's just say all the museums. I've set them up as individual points of interest, but I've also set them up as attractions for a cluster. Lodging, I've done the same thing. I put in every lodging property as far as a regular hotel. Did not go Airbnb, did not go bed and breakfast. I went regular lodging hotels. Each one is set up by their address, and then there also is a cluster for lodging. So I will be able to take that data and be able to go from that data month to month and tell you how many visitors were from 50 miles or further at that location during a certain weekend.
Little follow-up. So that may solve the problem getting the numbers, it may not. We've had 2 hotels built new here in the last 5 to 8 years, but we don't know if they're included or not in the numbers you're getting.
No, I don't.
There's no way to lobby to say, hey, we've got new hotels here.
This is a party that's been contracted by Travel Oregon to do this, and that is all between Travel Oregon. We've given them the list of our hotels. And so this, like I said, there again, it's a sampling to show you a trend. So that's why most of us DMOs, Destination Marketing Organization, said we need something better. And so most of us have signed up for this because this will give us data at our fingertips. We don't have to wait for that report to come and see what the trends are. We can use it, however, to use it as a trend and looking against the US and the region and the state so that we can know how aligned we are as far as that percentage of occupancy.
So it might take some additional lobbying, maybe with all your connections to make sure the hotels you want are included.
That, or we're also working on some other avenues so that we are in our own city.
I get it.
The proper here. So I gave you guys a report. This is the tip of the iceberg. I gave you a report that goes from January 1 through November 28. So that's the most recent data I can access as of today. So give it another month, and then hopefully I will be able to go through the end of December. But that's the delay on those pieces of data. It will show you, there is so much in here, but it will show you how many visitors came to our community, what their average stay was, how many of those were unique visitors. And then they will also, at the very last of this report, it breaks it out as into age, income, household size, education level, ethnicity, and then it compares it from year to year of what those percentages were. So this report will give us, it's amazing what's all in here. And it is too much for me to even try to go into for you tonight. But the overall is the very first page after the front cover. These are the numbers I can leave you so that you have an idea what this is. The overview from last year, we had a total trips of 2,975,000. Visitor days, what that equivalented to was 7,532,000 visitor days. They averaged 2.5 days per visitor per trip. So let's just say it's a contractor. They're coming down here, or a professional, business professional, and they have meetings down here. They averaged a stay of 2.5 days. And those visitors made 7 million trips throughout the year last year. Those are 1,250,000 unique visitors. So we have repeat visitors coming back, which would be your business part, your contractors part, and some of those. Now, when you take, let's just say 1 million are unique visitors. times 2.5 days times an average of $132 spending per day. That's how much money these people are leaving in your community. And that's a very low estimate. I will have better details for you within this next month after I go through the next training section of this. But I wanted you guys to know this is tourism and how much it's impacting you. That hotel tax, we may see a decline in the lodging stays a little bit for the nights, but our lodging prices are higher just because of everything in the cost. But that too, the percentage that the city gets for tourism is still a flat percentage. It's not based on rooms. It's based on amount. So when the amounts on the room goes up, we're still holding steady as to what we've brought in before for our lodging TRT, transient room tax. And that is what helps so many different things besides just marketing. And then any questions on that? Because I have one last fun announcement that has nothing to do with tourism.
Could you define a unique visitor? I didn't quite catch what that.
So unique visitor, and actually, if you go to the very back, there is a glossary, just so we know on what these different things. So a unique visitor it's basically the same cell phone number. So let's just say that one cell phone number makes many trips to the Dalles because they have business here. So they're counted once in the unique visitors. However, they may take and do a trip every month. So now they've made 12 trips. So that visits are in that visits piece of it, but the unique visitor is in that counting by cell phone. Does that help?
Yes, very much.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. I'm excited, but it's a non-tourism announcement. Travel Oregon released today the press release that they had put out a grant opportunity this last November, December. It was for a small business. The capacity building is what they called it. And the Dalles put in for it. The chamber did. And we put in for let me read it specifically to you so you guys have it. We're alphabetical. Here we go. So for systemic support with diversity, equity, and inclusion training opportunities, translation and messaging and communications with emphasis and focus upon the local Latinx business community. So we received a $50,000 grant. We will be partnering with Nextdoor, the Small Business Development Center, and we'll be creating curriculum, support, translation for Latino businesses that are here in our community. So they have some support for sustainable business building and properly running a business. They do it well, but we want to give them more tools. And so that's what this grant is for. So we wanted to let you know that we're bringing this also into the community to help that demographic. Any questions?
Any more questions for Lisa or Jennifer?
Good job.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for all of you that attended the banquet Thursday.
Thank you. Okay. Item 6 on the agenda is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer that question to the appropriate staff member who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council for up to 5 minutes about any item that is not on the agenda? Yes, please come forward and state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Maggie Cornett. I live at 1509 East 13th Street. I'm here to ask the city to add food waste collection service to curbside pickup. I believe this is something that has been discussed in the past, but I would like the city to revisit this topic. This Dow's disposal already yard waste curbside, so the infrastructure is already there. We have a local composting facility that can handle that material. Sending food waste to landfills is more expensive. It takes up space that is limited each year. And it also pollutes our air. And then we have a lot of community members that can use the end composted product from food scraps. Homeowners, farmers, orchards, vineyards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question for you before we, you said it's come up before the city council? I'm not aware of that. Does anybody else?
From my understanding, it's been discussed with the city council. I think Waste Services may have discussed options. I don't.
Okay,
I think like tipping fee and prices going to residents may have prevented
okay,
services at the time.
thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. Maggie, remind me, is there food waste pickup elsewhere in the gorge right now? Does Hood
There
River?
is, yes, City of Hood River.
How long
has
have they
food.
been doing that about?
I believe they started that program in 2012.
Well, if we had interest, then we'd have a case study to look against. And
Yeah, I'd like to get some background on
Yeah.
when this came before the city council, if at all. So maybe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the city council for up to 5 minutes about an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. Number 7 is the city manager's report. Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very brief report for you tonight. We are starting and already well on the way with the budget process that we go through annually. And so staff is working very diligently on that front. And I had a meeting with the city manager of Hood River last week, and we'll be doing some outreach, looking to kind of form a informal group, I guess, if you will, of other city managers throughout the gorge. Or maybe some kind of quarterly or twice a year kind of get together to talk about all the issues and challenges and opportunities that we have in front of us. So it was a great connection, great relationship that I have with the city manager in Hood River, and looking forward to expanding that to some of the other city managers in the gorge. Other than that, that's my report.
Great. Moving on to item 8 is city council reports. Before we get to A and B, let's go around the table and we'll start with Council Runyon.
Nothing new to report.
Council Richardson.
Briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had chaired a climate resilience task force meeting on the 13th and on the 19th. Attended the chamber banquet, which was a lot of fun. And our esteemed mayor was named Man of the Year. Well deserved.
Thank you. Council Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On January 13th, I also attended the meeting of the Climate Resiliency Task Force. January 16th, met with yourself, the mayor, and for a briefing session. January 17th, attended via phone our special session of the city council. And also on the 19th, attended the Great Gatsby Gala. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Long.
I do not have a report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McLaughlin.
I'm right here, Mayor, at the airport. We had a vacancy on the board, and that's David Griffith is no longer going to term, and Randy Anderson has taken that position. I too attended the banquet, and congratulations to our mayor for Person of the Year, Man of the Year. So good job.
Thank
That's
you,
my
Councilor.
report. All right.
Thank you,
bye.
Counselor. As far as my report goes, I appeared before Community Affairs Committee on January 12th. I was introducing Senator Merkley at his town hall meeting on the 13th. I also attended the airport board meeting on the 17th and awarded the aforementioned David Griffith with a certificate of appreciation for all he has done for this community, including the airport. And I was on coffee break KODL on the 18th. Okay, with that, we'll go to 8A, selection of a council president. I'll entertain a motion to elect a council president.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Runyon.
I'd like to nominate Counselor McLaughlin for councilor president.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved by Counselor Runyon and seconded by Counselor Randall to elect Counselor Tim McLaughlin as council president. Is there any other nominations? With that, all those in favor of Counselor McLaughlin being council president, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Counselor McLaughlin. Counselor reports under 8B is assignment of city councilors to various boards and committees. And I believe you all were given a copy of my recommended assignments. The airport board, I'm asking that Tim McLaughlin be the council liaison. Sister City, Counselor Long. Historic Landmarks, Counselor Randall. Traffic Safety, Counselor Richardson. Urban Renewal, Counselors Richardson, Long, and McLaughlin. Q Live, Counselor Randall and Runyon. The Outreach Team, yours truly, plus Counselor Long. And the Local Public Safety Coordinating Committee, Counselor Runyon. And the Household Hazardous Waste, Counselor Randall. Do I have a motion to approve these assignments?
I'll move that we accept the council committee assignments as described.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Long to approve the assignments as I described for committees and boards. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the more important items and issues. Any counselor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. Tonight, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. One is the approval of the January 9th City Council meeting minutes. Second is a resolution extending the beautification committee for another 4 years and the appointments therein. Number 3 is a resolution concurring with more appointments, several related to the airport board, the urban renewal budget committee and the city budget committee. I'd like to also recognize there are 2 people here tonight that I'd like to appoint who have attended in person. I'd like to recognize Mr. Randy Anderson. If you would just, there he is, the second row, raise his hand. And also on Zoom is Ben Ring, who I've asked to serve on the Urban Renewal Budget Committee and the City Budget Committee. And then finally, we have a resolution assessing property for the cost of nuisance abatement at 817 Floral. Is there any questions or discussion on any of these items?
Just have one brief question, Mr. Mayor, just out of
Counselor
curiosity.
Richardson.
Thank you. Do we have any openings on beautification still? Are you still looking?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Council Randall, thank you.
McLaughlin will second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Randall and seconded by Councilor McLaughlin to approve the consent agenda. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. It is time now for a public hearing regarding a general ordinance approving the comprehensive plan amendments and the zoning ordinance amendment. and revising the density ranges and density regulation of the Dalles Municipal Code. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you. Good evening. 1 second here. Good evening, Mayor Mays, Councilors, Joshua Chandler, Community Development Department. Next,
Excuse me, I forgot to read the script. If you'll
Okay.
bear with me just for a minute. Now is the time for a public hearing to receive testimony regarding General Ordinance number 23-1395, an ordinance approving comprehensive plan amendment number 54-22, revising prescribed residential density ranges of the Dalles Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Ordinance Amendment number 107-22 to revise residential density ranges and density regulation of the Dalles Municipal Code, Title 10, Land Use and Development. I will open the public hearing and ask for a staff report. Following the staff report, I will call for testimony for support of the issue, followed by testimony in opposition of the issue. At the conclusion of the testimony, the public hearing will be closed, and the matter will then be turned over to the city council for deliberation and a decision. So with that, I'm opening the public hearing. And again, Mr. Chandler, you have the floor.
good evening. Thank you for having me. The next item, as discussed, is consideration of General Ordinance number 23-1395. This pertains to zoning ordinance amendment number 107-22 and comprehensive plan amendment numbers 54-22. This is ultimately being floated as density code amendments. So take a look at, provided a briefing of the Dalles density, how, where it sits, where it came from. The Dalles zoning ordinance, TDZO, in your staff report, number 80-986. This was in effect from 1980 to 1998. This established minimum lot sizes and maximum density in the Dalles. And then in 1994, there was the adoption of the Dalles Comprehensive Plan. This adopted minimum and maximum density ranges. So at that time, the two, once the comprehensive plan was adopted, it basically had two standalone documents. In 1998, the Dalles Municipal Code Title 10 was adopted for land use development ordinance. This was to address and basically bring in the density ranges of the comprehensive plan, bring them into the code, address different things that are set up in the comprehensive plan and bring them into an ordinance. What the LUDO did in 1998 is it replaced the lot sizes that were previously established with the original zoning ordinance. It codified the comprehensive plan density ranges, so it brought those comp plan ranges into the municipal code, place them in the purpose statement of each residential zone. There is some changes, throughout and since the adoption. And most notably, or one of those notable changes in 2011, the city conducted an audit ultimately of our municipal code. At that time, a minimum density standard was added in. So this was an additional standard additional to the comprehensive plan. So basically it had two different density standards. And then there were some additional changes in 2019 and 2021 to address middle housing, HB 2001 state standards. In doing so, with all this, what we currently have is a comprehensive plan density range. Our comprehensive plan density ranges do not align with our municipal code lot sizes. So taking a look at the process here, this all started around February 2022, last year. Ultimately, this stems from an appeal that was, there was a land use development that was proposed for one parcel to be divided into three parcels. That application was denied because the application did not, it exceeded a maximum density for the zone. However, all of the lots that were proposed met the minimum density, the minimum lot size. So what happened from there is the planning commission directed staff to take a closer look at density, how it exists in our code, and, just kind of iron everything out and really move towards clear and objective standards, to make sure we don't get into the same type of situation that we were faced with in February. So from that, staff took a look at it with all the changes we've had in our department. It took a little bit to get it off the ground, but in July, we had our first discussion with the planning commission. At that meeting, it was requested that we distribute the proposed amendments to local contractors, surveyors, engineers, to kind of get their input on it to help shape the code. Only one comment was received in that period of time, unfortunately. October, we had our second planning commission discussion, basically taking some of those changes that we'd heard in August and modifying the amendments a little bit. And then in November, planning commission, the recommendation hearing was recommended unanimously by our commission. December 8th, after, staff provided recommendation to, or the proposed amendments to the Wasco County Planning Director, who then shared it with the Board of County Commissioners. There was no formal comment provided at that time. And then here we are today, July 23rd, looking at the adoption itself. So these density code amendments, they are establishing what they'll be doing is establishing a brand new article in our code strictly pertaining to density, really getting into the nuts and bolts of density. These will be restructuring multiple existing municipal code articles. Essentially, we searched for the word density in our code, and if there was a way to tweak it, we probably did and included it in these standards. These amendments adjust the comprehensive plan density ranges, and it ultimately creates flexibility within multiple different development scenarios with clear and objective standards. So some of the things we'll take a look in these slides, which you'll see also included as proposed amendments, taking a look at some definitions, adjusting these minimum maximum density ranges, removing that extra minimum density standard that was adopted in 2011, changes to the rounding and truncation section in our code. And this is going to be going forward, any calculation moving forward that has to deal with decimal points. This will be a standard. It's a bit more clear than what we have today. We'll touch on some calculating density, regulating density, this idea of redevelopment plans. I'll get more into those. And then establishing minimum lot allowances and basically moving forward, looking at when you're looking at densities and when you're looking at number of units, the best way to describe it is that one lot equals one dwelling. So ultimately, if you have a density standard of 3, it would either be 3 lots or 3 dwellings. We kind of look at them one and the same. So the first aspect I'm going into on this is adjusting the density ranges. Currently, density ranges and lot sizes are not evenly dividable into one another. As you can see here, the underline is the density range that's called out in the code compared to a minimum lot size. And when you look at the calculations, look at these examples, a 15,000 square foot lot divided by 5,000. One may think you could get 3 dwellings per lot. However, when you apply the density range to it, you actually get a different number. As you can see, the calculation broken out. So this is effectively a 15,000 square foot lot that has 2 different density ranges. Further into this, the current minimum lot sizes are shown up here. The RM and the RH zone, there's an asterisk next to them because ultimately we have 2 different sizes in those zones, depending on the type of building and the number of dwelling units you're building. So we basically went with the most stringent there, the smallest, to get these numbers. And so the calculations, as the calculations come out, what we're proposing is adjusting the density range to the minimum lot size. Effectively, what this would do is this would embed the density range into the lot size itself. So when an individual comes in to develop their property, they strictly look at the minimum lot size. They don't have to factor in a minimum lot size and a density range. So what this does is it adjusts it to the numbers in bold. As you can see, it'll look like a slight increase from what's there on the side, the maximum. So you can see an increase to every one of these zones. And this is it laid out here. Essentially what the proposed code amendment would be is that instead of 3 to 6 units per acre, it's 3 to 8.712. I mean, to be clear and objective, we got, we went all the way to the decimal points to really be clear on where we're at with where we got these calculations. I'll get into more on rounding, but ultimately, when you're looking at land development, decimals have to be rounded. There can't be a half of a lot or there can't be half of a parking space. But what we'll establish with this is that all of that rounding will occur at the time of development. So these numbers, these decimals will stay the same. They will not round at this time. But when a developer comes in, they want to work on their property, that is when we will look at the actual rounding and truncation of the calculations. We added in a provision for this density rounding provision, and basically it's any rounded whole number which results in a total number of dwelling units that exceeds those numbers shall be permitted no more than 1 dwelling unit. So over the density range. So for an example, an RL zoned development with a maximum density of 8.65 may be rounded up to 9 because of the rounding. Looking at 8.5, you would round it up to 9, of course. What this would do effectively is you would exceed that maximum density, but this is basically a provision that would allow you to exceed it in this instant. So looking again to speak on the rounding and truncation, currently there is no language regarding truncation in our code. Right now in our code, the minimum requirements are always rounded up. So this 11.053 would be rounded up to 12. And this was actually something for a parking space that we rounded up just in this last year. So as you would look at, practically it probably should be 11, but what our code says is you have to round it up. And then a maximum allowed is always rounded down. This example here shows, the calculation comes out to 2.88, but since it's a maximum allowed, you have to round it down. And this is the number basically that we were appealed on in the sense that we rounded it down. The individual was very close to creating 3 lots, but they had to round down. So therefore they were only allowed to have 2 lots. So we were proposing the truncation 2 numbers past the decimal point. So 3.4289 would be rounded to 3.42 and rounding at the 0.5, which is typical rounding process that we all learn early on. 2.49 would be rounded down to 2, while a 2.50 would be rounded up to 3. Calculating density. This is something that we needed to lay out. There was some questions on it in this last year. The density denominator. This is based on the individual development site itself. So therefore, it takes in nothing else into account except looking at the proposal in front of you. So if there is a development that has multiple lots, let's say that is all part of one development, you calculate the total of all those lots together and get your density based off all those lots. There's some calculations, some language that we added for deductions when calculating for net area. I'll get more into net area, but basically net area is you take your total amount of land and you remove constraints from that land to actually get like the buildable area is what you're looking at with net area. So this is the list that we've added, basically land constraints that could be used to decrease the overall buildable land on your site. And calculating density, looking at gross and net. So gross density, so I just mentioned gross density is really looking at that overall acre. Basically, you could pull something up on Wasco County GIS. That's going to show you like a gross acre ultimately. And then net density, what that is it is the number of units that can be built, which excludes the constraints that we had just talked about. So for instance, if there's slopes of over 25%, you would remove that area from your overall calculation. So what we're proposing is that when a developer comes in looking at the minimum required amount that they need to meet, they can use the net calculation, while the maximum allowed, they're able to use the gross calculation for the site. And I'll get into some examples on that. As mentioned, the proposed amendment, when determining minimum required density, net density is used for calculations. So this is an example, as you can see the outline of the lot there. This one was used. I think it really depicts heavily sloping lots over on the east side, 9th Street, really. So this takes a look at what your net density is. And it's really the buildable land. If you could really, we don't define buildable land, but it's really kind of that practical buildable area. You would remove the constrained lands from the overall calculation. And this is good when an individual wants to minimize the density on the lot. Not every developer or property owner that comes in wants to maximize how many houses they can build. People at times may just want to build one home. But when they have to meet a density requirement, this essentially would help them, basically saying, I have 50% of my properties is unbuildable, it's unusable. So you would remove that from the calculation, reducing the number of units that you would need to provide. For gross density, this is when determining maximum allowed density. The gross density is used for calculation. This is for the developer who wants to maximize. So just like in the other case, you have, all this constrained land that you could effectively remove from your calculation. Well, one thing by going this route is that may be unbuildable land, but you could essentially just pack your development onto the lower part of the lot here or to the front of the lot. So therefore, you would still be able to use the overall land area for your benefit in the number of units that you can build. So some clarification on duplexes and ADUs and how it pertains to minimum and maximum density. Minimum density, when you're trying to meet minimum density, a duplex would be counted as 2 dwelling units and an ADU would be counted as 1 dwelling unit. So therefore they are, benefiting you meeting that minimum density. Whereas in maximum density, a duplex would be considered 1 dwelling unit and an ADU would be considered no dwelling units. And this would be the fact that if an individual has a property, maybe they were already at their maximum density, but they still want to build an ADU, this gives them the opportunity to build that ADU. It seems like an obvious line, but we did have to add it into our code as we were questioned on it in the past. No proposed development may exceed the maximum net density of the underlying zone. Within all developments, we are creating, basically beefing up a section we already have, called the redevelopment plan section. And this is required for all proposed developments that do not meet minimum density. So therefore, an individual can come in with a proposal that doesn't meet density. They can put together a redevelopment plan that will show how you can meet that density at a later date. Essentially, they're establishing a plan that is then recorded with the county clerk. And it basically says that an individual doesn't have to meet density at this time, but the way that they are developing that property, they can get more density in the future. Let's say if they were to sell their property or, pass it on to family members who may want to develop about further. So the redevelopment plan, it's a newly proposed article that will go with in chapter 10.3 that will go with all types of development. Currently, we have we have a form of it in our land division section. It's commonly referred to as a shadow plat. This is an individual comes in, just like I was mentioning, they need to show us today how they can, what our standard is today is how a development can can meet 70% of the comprehensive plan maximum. We're clarifying that a little bit to basically say that this plan just needs to show how minimum densities can be met. There'll be the same requirements. We're basically pulling the same requirements on what's included in our site plan review section. And as mentioned, this is used to demonstrate how proposed developments allow for minimum densities to be achieved. So in taking a look at a couple pictures for you here, this is a tract of land out on the west side of town. As you can see, this area here, there's already plans to have 15th Street punched through here. So the lot in question here, I just threw out some numbers to show these examples. The gross density here, I'm just for an example, would be 5 dwelling units. But if you remove that right of way, you're probably going to reduce, let's say 1 for this example. So this would need to provide 4 dwelling units. So taking a look at 2 plans side by side, the good plan and the bad plan, I guess. This first one would be a proposal coming in, showing how it can be divided and placing a home on one of those parcels. Whereas a plan that would not be approved and it would inhibit development would be a proposed dwelling that sits right in the middle of that right of way. Granted, we have other steps in place that would not allow an individual to place a home in the middle of a planned right of way, but this is just kind of an extreme example for the argument this evening. And we then went out and had some assistance from a local draftsperson to put together a couple examples of redevelopment plans. Since this may be a new topic for people, for developers, we're going to be able to now provide them with examples on what they need to show on these plans. So these are 2 examples here. What this is this is a parcel of land. I think it's a 3/4 acre parcel of land. This individual is showing that they can build the house and a garage with an ADU highlighted in red right up at the front, and the area in the back, they can provide additional 7 dwellings because the total density of this lot is 8. So this is their ability to show how 8 can be built, but at this time, they're only going to build the 1. And this is another example of an oddly shaped flag lot over on the west side of town. This is another example as well. The area that's highlighted in red would be where the building pad is going to go, but this can also show how additional properties can be, or additional units can be built. And up in the upper left-hand corner, there's an area that's kind of shaded. That's an area that's actually in a stream corridor for the calculation purposes on this. The individual would show, they would basically calculate how much area is in the stream corridor, and they would take that and they would remove it out of their total area of land to get their net. So in adopting land use amendments, there's findings that we have to follow, just like any land use application. For land use amendments, what our code says is, Dallas Municipal Code basically says, make sure it meets the goals of the comprehensive plan. So I've gone over the different goals that we found this complies with. Goal number 1, citizen involvement. Policy 3 is that the land use planning process and policy framework shall include opportunity for citizen input. These, as mentioned previously, these amendments have been discussed with our planning commission twice. They were then discussed and approved at a 3rd meeting. Each meeting was properly noticed per our requirements. We did also have the opportunity, we put together a list of our local surveyors, engineers, contractors. Basically, we put together a list of, I think it was any one of those parties that have done a development in the Dalles, at least 5 developments over the last 5 years. So we can kind of get a running list of our pretty active developers to try to get more input to help draft up this language. Unfortunately, we did not really receive much input from our community, but they were very much given an opportunity to speak on it. And then the DLCD, we notified DLCD you know, 35 days before our first meeting, which is state requirement. Goal number 2, land use planning, policies 6 and 8, really, they're relatively the same, but basically this is a process of implementing this plan through appropriate ordinances shall be developed to allow for administrative review and approval authority. The proposed amendment implementation process is consistent with the legislative application process outlined in our code, as well as the noticing requirements outlined in our code. These amendments aim to provide clear and objective standards with all residential development, and this will encourage more administrative approval authority by removing ambiguity and discretionary language, which we've had. Then taking a look at goal number 10 for housing, policies 2, 5, and 8. Policy 2 up on the screen there. We are modifying the existing density ranges as well as ensuring the minimum densities can be met with the redevelopment plan. That policy has been met. Policy 5, the proposed amendments aim to achieve efficient use of all residentially zoned lands, also through the redevelopment plan process. This is ensuring that our densities will be met either at the minimum or maximum density stage. Policy 8, flexibility in implementing ordinances is needed to accommodate infill. As I mentioned earlier, we feel that this, by allowing the use of by allowing the use of net and gross density, we do feel that this, you know, kind of touches on all, allows for all development proposals, really. Whether you're trying to maximize or minimize your development, this really kind of is a one size fits all type of code. And then the last is the Oregon Revised Statute 197-307, and this touches on clear and objective standards. And really, it's clear and objective standards is the reason Planning Commission requested that we take a look at this code in the first place. We currently have discretionary language. We have 2, you know, in all of our zones, we have conflicting density ranges, and it creates some headaches, to say the least, in how we implement our code. So this is going to be an opportunity for us to basically clean everything up. And although the text and the proposal might be kind of dense, no pun intended, we really feel that it's a good path forward for administering residential development proposals moving forward. With that, staff's recommendation would move to adopt general ordinance number 23-1395. Another option, the second option would be decline the adoption, and the third would be providing staff with additional guidance on where to go from here. After that, I can answer any questions.
Okay. It's the time in the public hearing for anyone to testify either for or against the proposal. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come before the city council and testify in favor of this ordinance? Anybody? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to testify in opposition to the ordinance? Okay. Last call for either one. With that, I am closing the public hearing. It's time for the council to deliberate. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councilor Runyon.
I was a planning commissioner when I started out in public service with the city of the Dells, and unfortunately or fortunately, none of the years mentioned in this report were during my time. It was earlier. So, but it brings me to a thought that we, the city of the Dells Planning Department, planning commission, they've recognized or were brought to a recognition, I would probably better say, of ambiguous interpretations, which caused this to go forward and a lot of work, and I congratulate you on all that. But will we now be looking back to requests that also could have been denied or approved or under these new stipulations that were denied at the time to developers, families that were wanting to develop it could not get approved? Yet we have now found those were ambiguous rules that we are now fixing. So are we going to do any kind of checking of plans over the last whatever amount of years to see if there are development requests that could have been applied under these rules? Do we have an obligation to? Maybe that's a better question for Mr. Kara.
Yeah, and I could take a stab at it. I do not think we would be obligated to do so. And I can look back and look at applications that have been denied that would probably, or have been approved or denied that would probably be treated differently with these new standards. I think when we were appealed in February, the appellant at the time brought a list of land use proposals that have come forward that have been approved that did not meet density standards at the time. So we do know that multiple applications have been approved with really just disregarding, I think, the check of the density, not checking density ranges ultimately and approving applications. So and looking back, no, I would say very comfortably that we would not go back. But if an applicant were to come to us today or submit a new application per these rules, and we would treat them that way.
I'm not sure I buy that, but I think it's something we need to look at. Especially in the last few years, if we've denied applications based on what we have admitted are ambiguous rules that are now being corrected, that certainly would give me pause for thought if I had come forward and had a plan denied under those ambiguous rules.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, if they were denied, I mean, all land use applications ultimately expire if you don't do anything on them for about a year. So ultimately, we would have to revisit most proposals coming forward again. I mean, and I'd be more than happy if anybody wants to come and submit. We could take a closer look at them, but I don't know how far back of applications we're going to look to see if those that were denied. I think the issue would be that more applications were approved by not applying these standards than applications denied. I mean, we try to work with applicants, developers the best we can. It's very few and far between that we deny applications because we try to work with the applicant going into it and letting know that, hey, this may not work. It's probably going to lead to a denial. But, as far as approvals to denials, it's probably 95 to 5%, really it's so in the case that we could look back at all the applications that we've approved incorrectly and we'd maybe have to revisit those too. I mean, it would be kind of like looking at it the same way.
Ask our city attorney, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mayor Mays. I think that the community development director took the words directly out of my mouth. I think that that's exactly right. There's no obligation on the city to do any of these sort of like remedial lookbacks to ensure that past decision making was consistent with the code to the extent that there were ambiguities. They've been highlighted and corrected. And I will say, this all stemmed from a planning commission meeting, as Josh mentioned, from February 2021 or 2022. And we did it in less than a year. We changed density for the cities, through the planning commission process and now before the council's consideration to bring it here. It was a Herculean effort. And I will say, though, that the one applicant who I suggest that the city does contact is the one who sort of started this ball rolling. And just as the community development director just said, the application, if it came in, upon adoption of these by the council, would be treated under these new rules. And that's sort of exactly what they intended when they had an opportunity to appeal their planning commission decision, which denied their application to the council. I believe that the city informed them that if they were to appeal it and the council upheld the appeal, that they would then be barred from applying again for another year. Is that more or less right? Does that sound right? There's a 1 year buffer in between. proposals.
Correct. You're correct, but yeah.
But I think that we had thought at the time that we would be able to get that before the council before now. But then we dived into the code and it needed a lot of work. And so ultimately, I think that the city's best interest would probably be served by contacting that specific applicant who made this density issue the focus of their appeal, to encourage them to reapply under these potentially adopted code provisions that you are all considering here tonight. And I think that under these new rules, they would be able to meet their development goals. In fact, I believe we modeled them generally using that case as a tester to
Yeah.
see if the new methodology of determining density would be effective.
Couldn't he have appealed, he or she could have appealed it to the city council back in February?
That's exactly right. And so, that was an option that we had disclosed in the notice of decision, but there was also this underlying understanding, and it's in our code. I just don't happen to have it in front of me, that appeal decisions are no longer able to move forward as proposed land use projects, something to that degree. There's a 1 year gap in between them. And I think that there's a public policy there against people submitting the same application consistently that keeps getting denied. And so that 1 year gap is more than likely inherently built into the code to allow for this public process here to update our code to meet the needs of our city as they evolve. But all of that said, the number of applications that were approved that didn't meet the previously ambiguous code far exceed to the order of 95% to 5% the applications that were denied. And just because code is ambiguous, does not mean that the code is somehow flawed. I mean, ambiguity leads to some discretionary decision making, but so long as the decision is supported by substantial evidence in the record, more or less, it should stand in front of these are land use decisions. We have to keep those in mind. These will stand before appeals to LUBA and the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court and onward. And so I'm convinced, doing my legal review of what's happened here and working with Josh on this for the past year, that this is absolutely in the best interest of the city to adopt these changes, just as he's presented them.
Before Council Runyon, the floor again, I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. This particular developer, the description is on page 40 of the public commission. His name, can you name the person who was raising these issues on page 40?
Yeah. Kenneth Whiteman.
Okay.
And he has since, we mentioned that these are coming down the pipeline. He actually since decided to just move forward with a 2 parcel partition, even though we let him know that, if you waited just a little bit, this could happen. But a little bit turns into a couple of months sometimes with these adoptions.
Thank you. Council Runyon, you have the floor again. Did you have any other questions?
No, I'm just saying that if I can think of this as somebody else is going to think of it and come forward. And I think we need to look at those requests. If there was somebody that was denied in recent time, at least, because we've used that word ambiguous, and that just opens up the door to some things, I think. And nothing may happen, and we've denied few, but there could be a few out there. And I hope we treat those with the same flexibility.
Yeah. And I'd be more than happy to take a look to it, kind of look back at what was denied. And it's just, there's not a lot of applications that we typically deny, especially for land divisions, but more than happy to take a look and see if it was denied due to density and report back to you. No problem doing that either.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by any member of the city council?
Let's put a bracket on how far back we're asking Josh to look, like a year, 2 years. Let's keep a lid on that can of worms.
No.
I just want to comment, if I may briefly, Mr. Mayor, my read of this, Josh, and correct me. please, if I'm wrong, is that in fact, clarifying, this clarifying work actually sort of tips the rules in favor of additional density. The ranges, for instance, on Exhibit B, page 1, bump all of the maximums up a bit, sometimes quite a bit as a percentage, sometimes just a few units, leaving the minimums intact. Is that accurate?
Correct.
All right. And I will also say I had one question that Josh answered prior to the meeting, which was just my layperson's look at this seemed to suggest there were almost no limits to ADUs. But if I read your reply correctly, Josh, in fact, no lot can have more than 2 ADUs.
Correct. Yeah, our accessory development standards are not changing, which restrict the amount of ADUs that can be built. And there's a possibility that a couple, some lots in town, high density, medium density, and I think CBC zone, you could potentially have 2 ADUs on a lot, but that's the max total that any lot could ever provide.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I just have one other. Could you describe the effect that any recent state legislation has had on our efforts to increase density?
I guess anything specific?
No, I don't have anything in mind. I know that it had an effect on some of the other considerations we had regarding the land use development ordinance in the past.
Yes.
You wouldn't say that's the case in this?
No, not in the case in this. And with some of the middle housing standards that have come up, and also I don't know if the ADUs were included in middle housing or not, but basically ADUs are permitted almost outright all over the state. And ensuring that the ADUs are calculated as 0 units when you're looking at maximum, that's basically ensuring that state standard is still in place, still giving an individual the opportunity to build that 1 ADU, even if their development already exceeds or meets a maximum.
Okay, thank you. So by approving this ordinance, we're actually approving a comprehensive plan amendment and a zoning ordinance amendment.
Correct.
So the ordinance covers both.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Would anybody like to make a motion to pass this
Do
order?
that, Mr. Mayor.
Do you want it to be passed with?
Skip my favorite
Idle
part.
only.
Would anybody like to have the ordinance read in full?
Tim would, but we're not going to allow
No.
that. Oh.
The record show that Councilor McLaughlin is vehemently requested that we not read the ordinance in full. Anybody else? Okay.
Is this one you read or one of us reads? You read, okay.
Yes. Could the city clerk please read the ordinance in title, by title only?
General Ordinance number 23-1395, an ordinance approving comprehensive plan amendment number 54-22, revising prescribed residential density ranges of the Dalles Comprehensive Plan and zoning ordinance amendment number 107-22 to revise residential density ranges and density regulations of the Dalles Municipal Code, Title 10, Land Use Development.
Thank you, Ms. Grossman. Do I have a motion to approve the ordinance?
I'd make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there a second?
McLaughlin will second.
It's been moved by Counselor Runyon and seconded by Counselor McLaughlin to approve the aforementioned ordinance number 23-1395. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye, McLaughlin.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Chandler.
Great. Thank you.
11A is considering a contract for the Cirrhosis Reservoir modifications. For Dale McCabe.
Okay. Sorry about that. Haven't done this for quite a while, but anyway, Dave Anderson, gave kind of an extensive report regarding Cirrhosis Reservoir and the tank evaluation report that we had prepared for us by our consulting engineers, Tank Industry Consultants, also known as TIC. In that report, they reported findings that they had received from doing that evaluation that raised some concerns regarding some structural deterioration and metal loss, and particularly the rafters of Cirrhosis Reservoir and the roofing structure. And they also provided with us, some recommendations for repairs of that, what could be done. The city council authorized us city staff to go ahead and contract with Tank Industry Consultants to prepare some engineered plans and recommendations for the design, and also the contract specifications for correcting the repairs or making the repairs for the roofing structure. So following that council meeting, we got back into a contract with Tank Industry Consultants for doing that work. The goal for the city was to have Tank or TIC get onto that design and get those specifications in our hands as soon as possible, so that we could bid the project out in the fall, and then be able to get it under construction over this winter, the 2022-2023 winter season, and have it back online before the end of April, this coming April of 2023. By the time we received the specifications and the plans and we put it out to bid, that was at the end of October. It was out for bid for 1 month. We received some calls from from one of the contractors that was interested in bidding on the contract. And part of the design that TIC was looking at was providing us with two different options. One option would be for doing repairs that would be for extending the life of the reservoir by 25 years, or a second option of being able to have repairs that would ultimately extend the life by approximately 50 years. And in discussions with the contractors during the bidding, they were concerned that they were going to be lucky to be able to complete the repairs for even the 25-year option, and there'd be no way that they'd be able to complete the work for a 50-year option if that was the one that was selected. And a lot of that had to do with just the extensive amount of work, but also the lead time and being able to procure materials. Right now it's particularly metals, and it has quite a significant lead time of being able to get materials even available. In fact, we just received some word on another contract that we have out to bid, that 6-inch ductile iron pipes taking up to 30 weeks to be able to get materials for that. But so anyway, in discussions with the contractor, we decided to issue an amendment to the contract and allow for an additional construction season that would ultimately take the project completion to the end of April 2024. And so in that instance, what we would be able to do is take the reservoir offline right at the 1st of October, right after the water season that we generally have for the demand during the summer months up through September. By the end of September, the water demands have decreased significantly by the time we get to the fall. So we would be able to take Cirrhosis offline by the first part of October, and then that would give them clear till the end of April 2024 to be able to complete the work. And with discussions with the contractors, they felt that that was that would definitely work for them, and they'd be able to do that. So we changed with that addendum that completion date. We also extended them and gave them a little bit more time to look at their bids. And so we changed the bid opening date on this and extended it as well. So with that, we did have a bid opening for the project on January 5th. We received 2 bids, one from T. Bailey, and T. Bailey has done work for the city in the past. They actually are the ones that built the new Vista Reservoir up above the hospital. That was done in the 2011-12 range. And then we also received a bid from Paso Robles Tank out of California. The engineer's estimate that we'd received from TIC for both the 25-year option or for the 25-year option was in the amount of $645,000, and for the 50-year option was in the amount of $900,000. T. Bailey's bids came in for the 25-year option at $680,000, just slightly above the engineer's estimate, and then also $985,000 for the 50-year option, which is a little more than what the engineer's estimate. But we reviewed their bids and deemed them complete, and that they were a good responsive bid. So in looking at the budget implications to the project, staff is going to make the recommendation that we go with the 50-year option that was proposed by T. Bailey. We feel that would be in a benefit for the city to basically double the life of the reservoir from 25 years to 50 years, and just by doing less than a 50% increase in the cost to do that amount of work. In the Fund 53, the Water Reserve Fund, the city did have $600,000 budgeted for the Cirrhosis Reservoir project. That was before we had received any of the estimates from TIC and actually the actual total scope of work of what they were proposing. That's what we had budgeted for. But also in that same fund, we also have a significant amount of money put away for the future painting of the Garrison Reservoir. We have determined that we're not going to be able to do the Garrison Reservoir during this time right now until such time as some future water improvements get put into the port that we are working with a developer on right now. Once those water improvements go in, then that would give us the ability to take Garrison Reservoir offline to be able to get in and do the painting of that contract or of that reservoir. So with that, we can take the monies that were set aside for the Garrison Reservoir, because they are in that same fund as the Cirrhosis Reservoir, and we could use the monies from the Garrison Reservoir for the Cirrhosis Reservoir project to be able to cover the entire amount, include up to that $985,000 for that 50-year option. So with that, again, staff's recommendation is going to be for the city council to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with T. Bailey Inc. for the Cirrhosis Reservoir roof structure modifications and spot coating, contract number 2023-001, in an amount not to exceed $985,000. And with
Thank you,
that,
Mr.
I can
I'm
answer
sorry.
any questions.
Any questions for Mr. McCabe?
McLaughlin has one. Mr. McCabe, taking cirrhosis offline, would this affect the water pressure to homes in the general area or the surrounding areas?
It may a little bit, but it won't. We took it offline just a couple years ago to do the painting on the inside of the reservoir. And it was offline from November or the end of November, first part of December, clear through the end of April in 2020. That's when that interior painting contract happened. And so we, have the ability to take it offline with the new Vista Reservoir and still be able to adequately supply the constituents or the customers with adequate pressure and volume.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a couple regarding the Garrison Street situation. Are we going to have enough money to do that in a few years?
Well, we will. I think Dave answered a question for Mr. Richardson earlier. He'd kind of raised that same question, and we typically try to put $2 million a year away into the water reserve fund. So the time that those improvements out in the port happen could be in the 2020 or 23-24 year or 24-25 fiscal year. And so by then we would be able to have enough money built back up to cover the Garrison Reservoir.
Those water system improvements in the port area don't have anything. Those have been planned for a long time, right? They have nothing to do with Google, right? Is that right?
But those are related to the development that's going to be happening.
Oh, they are related. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Mayor Mays. Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I would defer to the council president elect.
Oh, okay. All right. Mayor Mays, I move to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with T. Bailey Incorporated for the Cirrhosis Reservoir roof structure modification and spot coating contract number 2023-001 in an amount not to exceed $985,000.
I would second that, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Council McLaughlin and seconded by Council Richardson to approve the contract. Is there any more discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
Our final action item tonight, our final item is an action item, and it's a resolution amending the city's fee schedule. Mr. Kara.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. The city fee schedule has been around, at least as far as my records have indicated, since 2001. And it provides both the city internally as for its staff, as well as the public, with the city's list of charges for all of our municipal services that we offer. Typically, it's my understanding again, the city's historically had an opportunity to look at, reflect, and update its fee schedule on a yearly basis. Although the most recent update was over 2 years ago on January 11, 2021. And so attached here, sort of in the very last 3 pages of your packet, is a copy of the city's fee schedule, and it includes it in red line form. So any new changes can be highlighted for your consideration. The process that we had implemented to sort of take a look at these fees to review them involved coordinating with each department head that's responsible for the specific fee generally, or their department is, to give them and pretty much a whiteboard for them to cross things out and update as needed. And so what you're looking at here is very much the result of some interdepartmental coordination and cooperation. And so my role was simply to coordinate all of that. Every fee change that you see here was recommended by staff. They appear to be relatively modest changes. just to sort of keep in line with some of the rising costs that staff has encountered over the last 2 years since this was updated last. For example, if you look on the second page of my staff report, you'll notice that the finance department changes. The only change really is changing their non-sufficient funds check fee to $30 instead of the current $25. And the reason why is to match what the city's bank would charge the city for that very same thing. The list of changes are listed here in the staff report in bullet point form, but the rest again are sort of redlined, and it's rather self-explanatory in the packet from pages 76 to 79.
We back up 1 second. That first one, so the banks is 25 or is it 30? It says it's currently 25 and we're raising ours to 30 to match a $25 fee, or we have a typo there?
No, there's no typo. So if you look at the rest of these bullet points, you'll notice in parentheses, at least sort of the style when I wrote this was, I wrote in italics the current fee. And so $25 is the current fee. If someone were to have an insufficient fund check fee and be assessed against them, they pay $25. And so now it's being proposed to be increased to $30, which is the match to the city's bank's current charge.
But they are charging 30, not 25.
Is charging $30. And so this,
Thank you.
yes. And so, they're more or less along those lines. And as well as removing some of the older fees that are no longer relevant. And so one final thing I'd like to mention, and this is for the mayor, Oregon law requires the city provide an opportunity for anybody who's interested in this, interested persons, to comment on the city's enactment of any resolution, such as this one, which prescribes a new fee or a fee increase or an increase in the rate or other manner in which the amount of a fee is determined or calculated. However, this is an action item. It's not a public hearing. Despite that, best practices suggest that the mayor ask the audience for comment on this proposed resolution before council considers adoption.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the recommended fee changes? Anybody? Okay, Mr. Kara.
Nope, that's about it from me. If there's any questions on any of the substance of these fee changes, I'm happy to take a stab at answering them to the extent that they require explanation. However, otherwise, I might want to defer to one of the department heads who provided me with this list. But I leave it to council at the council's discretion.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions or comments regarding the suggested fee changes?
Why are fingerprint fees no longer applicable?
I was going to ask about all three of those.
Yeah.
What's the logic? Perhaps the chief or our city attorney can explain what the logic behind
Briefly, I'm not really
taking out,
concerned about it. I just am
Yeah.
slightly curious.
why we're eliminating fees for those three items under the police department?
I personally do not know. I believe that there might have been a change in, well, I'm not so sure about why we're removing those specific fees. I would defer to the police chief or Matthew. However, some of the other charges that were associated with the police department, those are the result of staff's experiences over the last 2 years. This specifically with respect to the body cam footage changes.
No, I was
yeah.
asking about on page 2 of 2, the three items that we're no longer requesting fees for.
Yeah.
An exam, I could guess I can understand that. We want to encourage people to apply. Chief Worthy, do you?
Tom, would you like a copy of my staff report?
Let's just take them one at a time. The
Yeah,
first,
the first one's a fingerprint fee.
yeah, we're not fingerprinting anymore.
Oh, that's a
County
good.
does that.
It's the county. And so they use a device called a live scan device, which electronically scans fingerprints. And so there's no need to do rolled ink cards anymore.
Okay, what about the towing fee
A towing fee.
vehicles? Yeah.
Yeah, so the towing fee is to do with codes primarily when we remove them. and it's to release them. We don't do that work anymore. The release is established through the tow company itself.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion?
Does this need read?
Say what?
It's a resolution that needs read. How does that work?
Are you asking?
Yeah, I am.
The resolution does not need to be read in full, no.
Anybody like to make a motion to approve the resolution increasing fees? Counselor Richardson,
I move to adopt resolution number 23-003, a resolution amending the city fee schedule effective tomorrow, January 24th, 23.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Randall to approve the resolution increasing fees. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Is there any other business to come before the council? One quick question, the two items that were deleted from the agenda, are we expecting those to come back? Okay, thank you. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Make it. Some nights I've got more energy than others.
There's no football game on tonight, so what's the big deal? We only schedule executive sessions.